Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the amazing Chris Mayo. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me. It is quite apt that it is one of the hottest days in the UK, and it is sweltering hot. So I feel like the film we're about to talk about, there's a good vibe for me feeling kind of generally grubby and a little bit hot and stressed. So yeah, good position to be in. But yeah, otherwise, very good. Thanks for having me.
Funny how the universe did that for us.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a scorcher here in Michigan too, man.
Okay,
Um,
nice, nice.
but before we talk about why Chris is here, I would like those of you that don't know Chris to get to know him a little bit. He is a London-based actor, writer, and content creator with his pop culture social media channel, Big Fat Cult. He is a horror nerd and lover of all weird and wild and wonderful movies. He's also performed stand-up comedy all across the UK, which we got to get him over here across the pond a little bit, I would say. And co-creator of the award-winning dark comedy series Mother Knows Best. So let's dive into this a little bit. How long have you been acting and writing for?
Probably since I was about 16, 17, which is a number of years ago. Um, but like as a professional, probably in my sort of mid 20s, so about like 10, 12 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So I started as a comedian actually, and then got into acting off the back of that, and then actually found I enjoyed the collaborative element of acting a lot more than doing comedy and traveling around on my own. So got into acting more, and then the kind of comedy took a little bit of a sidestep, and then had the idea to start creating my own work, and then that kind of led on to the content stuff. And then ironically, I'm back doing stuff on my own again. But I do a bit of everything. I kind of float around doing these little projects. But yeah, for about 12 years, that's when I kind of got into the idea of doing it as a career, I suppose.
Sure. And then you talked a little bit about it, but Big Fat Cult. Going back to content creating, like you said, a lot of times it's a lonely island out here when you're doing it on your own. But what made you decide, you know what, I'm going to pursue this? This is something I want to do. I want to get my opinions out there to people with this medium. What gave you the desire to do that?
I think it was just coming out of the pandemic, as I think a lot of people found that getting work and having creative ideas was a bit of a challenge. And everyone was kind of coming up with all these projects, and I was thinking, oh God, I've just been, haven't really been doing anything for the last couple of years. And everyone's like, I've just written my third feature film, I've just done a play, I've just been doing XYZ. So yeah, I just when the cinemas opened up again, I was like, right, I'm just gonna get out there and try and see as many films as I can, and just get that kind of creative feeling again, even if I'm not actively doing anything myself. And then I just started making a couple of videos about some films that I'd seen, and my kind of comedy background, I was like, oh, I can kind of come at it from a not pretentious, not serious angle, and just have a bit of fun with it. And people seemed to like that, and responded well to it. And then yeah, just kind of gradually got into it that way. And then I was very lucky in that the first few videos I did, or first few recommendations I did, happened to be about cult movies and kind of reached a more niche audience. And then that kind of grew. And then I built a little kind of um, following, little brand, whatever you want to call it, from there. And also the name helps. I think it's a kind of name that makes people go, what did you say?
Yeah.
Um,
I was
so
hoping, I
uh,
was like, Ken, please don't mess up the name. Ken, please don't mess up the name.
you would not be the first. But yeah, so I love talking about movies, especially with people that like talking about movies. And obviously you meet a lot of opinionated people when you talk about movies, but you also meet a lot of lovely people. So it's been a real like fun way to engage with people that like stuff that I like. And yeah, I've
Right.
just kind of been lucky enough to make some money out of it now, and do it as a almost as a full-time thing now.
And it's amazing. Like I couldn't be any happier for any content creator that gets to pay their bills by doing something they genuinely love. That's the goal, and the fact that you're doing that, you're
Yeah,
sharing your
absolutely.
love and passion with all these other people, and also that goes into Mother Knows Best. Now, this is a dark comedy web series. Where can people check this out at?
So it's on YouTube. I did it back in 2017 and 18. It was like my first kind of solo, well, not like my first off my own back kind of writing,
Sure.
producing project. So it was a crowd-funded web series. We did a first series, and then that won an award for best comedy web series, I think. And then we kind of did a bigger like crowd-funded second series. Got some kind of people that are quite well known in the UK for comedy and comedy actors, and kind of took the profile up a bit for the second series. Um, and then put that out on YouTube. And to be honest, just kind of just let it do its thing. Like, so it wasn't like a massive thing, but it was a nice way to create um like a comedy that I could also be in as an actor, but also flex
Sure.
my filmmaking skills a little bit as well. And my co-writer and director Scott Kingsnorth, who I did it with, but like we had a nice kind of project to do over a year. And maybe something that I'll go back to at some point, but it definitely kind of ignited that, you know, excitement for
Right.
creating stuff. And it's a dark, weird comedy as well. So people that like that kind of stuff, it's kind of that little cult kind of underground type of thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's all on YouTube. But the way Mother is spelled, it's really wanky and annoying. It's like M.O.T.H.E.R. Knows best. So
Right.
yeah, I think if you Google Mother Knows Best, you get a song from Tangled or something. So that's very much not what the thing is. If you're looking, thinking this is a bit strange, but no, it's out there.
Well, the best part about it is you guys don't have to go Google it because I have all of the links for Mother Knows Best, Big Fat Cult, as well as Chris's social media links, all down in the description. So make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube, following on Big Fat Cult, and make sure you're following him so you can stay up to date on all the amazing things he has coming up for us as well. So, we've talked about some of the amazing things that you've done now and what you're doing, Chris. But here for a second, I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie, and Chris, the first horror movie you watched was,
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
and I do have to clarify, we are talking about the original 74 version, right?
We are, yes. You can see the little where are we? The
I
little
love them.
little bits behind me there on my little horror shrine.
Right next
Um
to Long Legs, man. I love it.
yeah, yeah. Past meets present.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so that was my first proper horror film, which I say in inverted commas. Like I'd seen horror adjacent stuff, and I'd seen horror stuff where I maybe wasn't going into it kind of watching it as a horror fan, but my first, classic big horror film was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
I think probably 16, maybe 16, 17.
And
So kind of
it's
as
still such a huge moment. This is a film that I still feel like is so glossed over because the rest of the franchise is not all that great. But this first film, even though like us horror fans are huge on it, this isn't, everybody knows Freddy, everybody knows Jason, everybody knows Chucky. People that aren't hardcore horror fans, they don't know who Leatherface is, which is a shame because this first movie is perfect. But do you remember who you were with the first time you had seen it?
just me. It was a late night stumble on TV at like so we're in the UK, we have a channel called Channel 4, which shows loads of like arty programs, comedy, horror, like more kind of, the stuff that you stumble across late at night, and it's a little bit more edgy. And so I think I was just in bed, like flicking through TV, and they'd have like a late night Friday night horror film or a late night, cult movie. And I actually, the first time I watched it, I started watching it about halfway in.
Mm-hmm.
So I flicked it on when, I don't know, it was probably the meat hook moment, or it was like right in the thick of all the intense, stressful screaming and running around. So I just switched on like, what the hell is this? This is absolute chaos. And I didn't know if I liked it the first time I saw it. I'll be honest. Like I was a teenager. I didn't know anything about horror films, but something about it, I was like, okay, this is gritty and interesting and disturbing. So it piqued my interest enough to watch the whole of the second half, and then a few years later went back and like really properly watched it. But yeah, that memory of watching it at like midnight when I'm a teenager, not having any context, um, was yeah, very creepy,
Dreadful.
and obviously made a mark on my my brain.
Right. Well, and like I said, this is a movie that I feel like if this came out today, it'd be an A24 movie. I've always felt this is more of an art film than it is a slasher. You know, they go to
Mm.
his house. You know what I mean? Like, and all the beautiful shots, and like you can almost smell what's going on. You can feel the heat, as we were talking about earlier. But do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most?
Um, so I think there's like two or three kind of iconic scenes that everyone remembers. There's the arrival of Leatherface the first time you see him, and then he, dragging the first guy in and getting his first victim. But I think as a comedy lover, as a dark comedy horror lover and a dark comedy lover, I think that the dinner table scene was the scene that everything comes to a head at that point. It's got the kind of the torture vibe, it's got the disturbing vibe, it's got the weird comedy with the grandpa, it's got the characters are there. It's just like it's a horrible but also a very darkly funny scene. And I think the way it combines those two elements, you
Mhm.
feel absolutely horrible for Sally and what she's going through, but you also can't help but laugh at the chaos of it all. So I think that also made me realize that you can do lots of interesting things with horror beyond just being horrible or just beyond being scary. Um,
Right.
but that was the moment I was like, wow, this is a really well orchestrated scene, and I want to dig into how all these little elements come together and why am I laughing, why am I horrified, and all these things. So yeah, that's the scene that kind of creeped me out, but almost, also, yeah, impressed me the most in the film, I think.
I love that because, like you said, that's a serious moment in the film where you're like, and like you said, as an adult, as a kid, it just wrecked me, you know. But as an adult, like you're right, there's these moments like when they're just laughing and you can't help but smile, but at the same time, you're like, damn, how is Sally not considered the scream queen with all this shit that she's got going on in her life? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so we know which scene affected you the most, but I always like to talk about favorites too, because we talk about favorite scenes and stuff like that. So, what would your favorite scene from Texas Chainsaw be?
I mean, that's up there as well. And I think the arrival of Leatherface, I think, is one of the most kind of slept on, like iconic horror scenes as well. Just that,
Opening that door, man.
yeah, it's like it's sort of a jump scare. It's not quite a jump scare because it's all done with like barely any audio. It's all very you just hear the little like clucking of chickens and you just hear the buzzing of flies and you just feel that kind of creepy um that kind of dread feeling. I think what I mainly love about the film is the atmosphere and the fact that it is a very, very simple story of a deranged serial killer in the middle of nowhere and his family. Very simple story, but it's all the elements of the film that make it: the performances, the cinematography, the sound design, the production design. So yeah, I just love that. I mean, both those scenes could interchange as to one of my favorite and one I find the scariest, but um, I just love that first moment of him opening, dragging the guy in. I've forgotten the name of what's the character's name?
I know Sally and I know Franklin. Like besides
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
that's
feel
it. I'm
bad. I
done.
feel bad for not knowing the character's name. But yeah, the first kind of the death, the dragging down into the kind of workstation, the hammer over the head. It's just brutal. It's and it just sets up for the fact that anything can happen in this movie and that this guy is just completely unhinged. There doesn't seem to be any method behind what he's doing. It's just nasty and very effective as far as like this is this character, by the way, guys. Like it's a
Right.
real like holy shit, where did this guy come from? This is yeah, it's just an iconic moment, and I just love that.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite moments in the whole film too. Like, and like I said, it's iconic for a reason because you all of a sudden the door opens, this big burly dude with a hammer. You know, like
Yeah.
it's just well, as we know in Hollywood, remakes, requels, sequels, it's kind of all the rage now. And we did get a remake for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Did you watch the remake and were you a fan of it?
I did. So I've seen very. I was trying to work out which ones I've seen. So I've seen like the original sequel, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Saw the remake in was it 2013? You said, yeah, 2013. Saw the remake. Was it 2003?
I want to say I
No,
got
it
it
would have been
right
it
here.
would have been
Oh three,
three, right?
oh three. Yep.
Oh, three, yeah. Yeah, so it's all the 2003 one with Jessica Biel. Biel?
Jessica Biel. Yep.
Jessica Biel?
Not
Yeah.
Alba. Biel. Yep.
Yeah. Thought that was good. Like it's that's like a kind of what I would call like a fun remake where it's like it's got the nods to the original. It does what it does quite well, but you know, it's never going to be the original, but it's a solid remake, I think. And a lot of people do actually prefer the remake to the original, which is totally cool, but it's a very different style of film, I would say.
Whole
It's
different style.
what I see as like a Hollywood horror film.
Yeah.
And yeah, I on its own, I really enjoy it. But nothing quite gets close to that atmosphere of the original for me. But yeah, no,
You took the
I
words
do
right out
like
of my
it.
mouth. Like I love in the
Yeah.
remake when Leatherface puts on her boyfriend's face and he walks out and you see him with her
Mm,
boyfriend's face on. Like moments like that, I'm like, yeah, that's so dope. But like you said, there's nothing to me that's gonna touch that original film. Sally screaming at that dinner table for so long, like, oh,
mm,
it's
yeah.
insanity and it's amazing and I love it. But um when we talk about a franchise, I always ask, and I think I know the answer to this one, but when we talk about a franchise, I always ask, is your first horror movie your favorite horror movie in that franchise? So would the original Texas Chainsaw be your favorite in that franchise?
Yes, absolutely. I think with films where you get like official sequels and there's, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, where you have loads of films and they all have their moments. So you're like, actually, I really like that one. And actually, I really like that scene. And, you can kind of, sometimes it's hard to choose your favorite. I feel like that with Friday the 13th. Like there's lots of the kind of middle ones that I'm like, oh, I absolutely love that film. 'Cause it's so stupid or it's so funny or it's so gory or whatever. Um, with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think it's such a wide difference between
Yeah.
the other ones in the franchise, whether they're official sequels or whether they're remakes. I do really like the second one though, for completely different reasons. I think that's like a campy, silly, horror, fun classic that I think is very underrated. Um, but yeah, nothing touches the original for me.
Hey, I definitely agree. Like I said, that's my favorite in the franchise too, and I don't think anything will ever touch that. But we've talked about Texas Chainsaw Massacre and what that movie means to you. But here for a second, my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Chris? What is your
Oh,
favorite horror movie of all time?
well, Ghostface. Thanks for the question. Um, my fate. So I'm not chickening out of the question, but I would say I probably have a top five that hasn't changed, or like a top three to five that hasn't changed, but where what my number one is kind of juggles around within that list, depending on whether I've seen it recently, depending on. But I think probably the film that, I mean, it's a really boring answer, but the film that I think is the most rewatchable and that I enjoy the most elements of is probably The Exorcist. Um, just because, again, a very early horror film for me. It's one of the first that I saw. And I just think it has all those elements of the storytelling, the performances, the lasting impression it leaves you with. And I think and what it does for like horror cinema, I think it's one of the most influential as well. So I kind of think of that as my favorite. But Texas Chainsaw would be up there. The original Suspiria would be up there. Rosemary's Baby, Carrie, Hereditary for a more recent one. Like all of those are somewhere in my top 10, and I kind of just rattle those names off
Juggle
and
them.
hope someone likes
Right.
one of them and I can talk to someone about them. But yeah, they're all in my top. And The Shining as well. The Shining's another top for me.
And like I said, it's such a hard loaded. That's why I never tell people I'm going to ask it because I want it off the seat of your pants answer. I don't want people to think
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but I do have all of Chris's links down in the description. So please make sure you're following, subscribing, and becoming a part of that family. But before I let you go, Chris, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Chris, what would your ranking of Texas Chainsaw Massacre be?
Ah, so, well, affected in terms of future me or in terms of like the impression it had on me at the time, how scared I was
Yeah, on you at the time.
at the time. Well, I'd never seen anything like it before. Haven't really seen anything like it since, but at the time, it confused me a lot because I didn't really know what was going on because I watched it halfway through. But I'm gonna go I'm gonna go 4.5 because even though I knew it wasn't real, I believed it completely. It
Mm-hmm.
creeped me out. It disturbed me. And like I can often think back to that moment of watching that film for the first time. So um yeah, there was moments when, I'm gonna put the minus half point down to me not seeing the first 25 minutes of the film. So I'm gonna say 4.5 seems a solid
And
reaction to how much that creeped me
that's absolutely solid. So, man, I do want to thank you, Chris, once again for coming out and hanging out with me for a little bit. But please don't go anywhere, my friend. I do got a couple more questions for you. Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.